Bachman's Basement is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Welcome back to Bachman's Basement, where we take a deep dive into the prolific imagination of Stephen King. I'm your host, Chris Clawson, and I'm here with my co-host, Chris Patton. And this week, we decided to have a little fun with our Halloween episode. Unlike most of our episodes, which are focused on a specific story, this one's going to be a top 10 favorite book and film countdown. Before we get this thing started, Chris, how's things going for you?
It's going pretty good, man. Things at work are starting to calm down. New Pokemon's out. Been playing a lot of that. So Pokemon ZA, been playing that a lot. And then outside of that, man, catching some horror flicks, some old ones. I watched The Blob yesterday, which is a the 1980s Blob, I should specify.
Nice.
But yeah, just been kind of doing that whole thing, getting ready for the spooky day. The show's obviously pre-recorded a little bit, but if you're listening to it after we recorded it, happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. Yeah, my week's been pretty standard, work and home life. My wife and son and I went and saw that new Keanu Reeves, Aziz Ansari, and Seth Rogen comedy, Good Fortune. And I highly recommend that. It's very entertaining and maybe a little too real to the state of the world, but very entertaining nonetheless.
Keanu Reeves in his first comedy role since Bill and Ted?
Probably. I mean, he's putting it on. Like, he knows how to play dummy, and he does it great in this. So,
what a cast of characters there.
Right, it works. It definitely works. So,
yeah, it sounds like it'll be very entertaining. I might have to check that one out.
Yeah, for sure. I guess we'll get started here. Obviously, we're both big fans of Stephen King's work, and as simple as this idea might sound, the challenge, at least for me, was narrowing it down to just 10. We'll be starting at 10 and alternating between book and film. So I guess I'll kick it off with my selection for 10th place book. In 10th place for me is the book Salem's Lot. This was my first Stephen King book that I read, and it's near to my heart as it was recommended by my Uncle Jeff, who, as I mentioned previously, is also a huge Stephen King fan. And although it's not my favorite novel, I do believe it's his, and it's certainly worth making the list. I remember reading part of this novel for the first time alone at my apartment one night. There was a thunderstorm going on outside, and the sound of the storm, along with the power flickering periodically, combined with being alone, made this story extra hair-raising for me.
Yeah, and I guess for my number 10, as far as a book goes, which, by the way, Salem's Lot is also on my list, but I have it slightly higher. Not very much higher, but slightly higher, was Carrie. Much for the same reason. I think it's one of the first ones I read. It's a very explosive debut for Stephen King. You get a tell of adolescence, pain, and the psychic ability, which I was already into because of, like, X-Men. And it also kind of, I caught this in middle school, kind of being a little bit of an outcast back then in a different neighborhood. So there's some relation to the character, I think, that kind of holds up. Yeah, so that's my number 10 is Carrie, which still to this day I really enjoy. And I actually had it higher on the list originally, but then as I started narrowing things down from 25 to 20 to 10, to 10, this thing had shifted around a whole lot by the time that we got to these top 10s.
It's tough. Yeah, this is tough. And there's books that I absolutely adore that aren't on this list. And so don't take this list as like a, it is obviously our personal opinions, but it's really hard to narrow this stuff down. So there's actually a book omitted here on my list that I'll note on later that it's one of my favorites, and yet it didn't make my top 10 just because of reasons I'll talk about later.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and put it out. I couldn't remember what we decided on for The Dark Tower since it is a series of books. So it is not on my list. If it was on my list, it would be in the top 3 probably as a whole. I'm just going to go ahead and give it its props now. Fully. Yeah. So if people are like, oh my God, I can't believe none of The Dark Tower's on there. It's because I didn't know how to do. I would have had to break it out into at least 2 separate books that both would have made this list. So we're just going to say, for me, it's a masterpiece. But I didn't know how to fit it because it's a whole series. So just honorable mention for me is The Dark Tower.
Fair. Moving on, as I was saying before, we're going to be rotating back and forth between book and film, just counting down. So in 10th place for film adaptation for me, like your 10th place book, is Carrie. Strangely enough, just like my 10th place book, my pick for 10th place film was also my introduction to King cinema. I think I was 10 or 11 the first time I watched that. And I watched it with my parents. And I remember thinking as I watched the film, this isn't that scary. But as those who have seen it know, the 1976 film starring Sissy Spacek has one hell of a jump scare right at the end. My mom, who was aware of this, and right as that scare happened, grabbed my leg, which gave me a Charlie horse. And I was so startled from the combination of those things happening at the same time. It made it extra scary and memorable in my head. So it had to make the list for me for sure.
I had similar experiences with my mom. I'll get into some of those a little further down in my list. It wasn't with Carrie, but some of the other. It's funny how parents used to torment their kids. Do they still do that in today's society? Has that changed? Do parents still torment their children?
Being a parent, I've certainly subjected my kids, not against their will or anything, but showed them some scary movies, ones that I thought were at the appropriate level, but maybe just a little bit above their level, and to varying degrees of expectation. At least for me, I found that my kids are, I don't know if the word is more mature, but maybe just more conditioned to the world than I was at their age. So that's my 2 cents on it.
The damn internet's ruined everything. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to throw on anguish.
Right.
The real scare.
Yeah.
All kidding aside, for my number 10, it's something that we just talked about on the last episode, and it cracked the list. Like, I'm thinking of best film, like Stephen King films, Stephen King adaptations, Stephen King directed films, and I was like, damn, The Monkey was really good. Especially since I recently rewatched it and we talked about it. So it didn't make it high up the list, but it did make it to my number 10. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because there's a whole episode about it. Which if you're listening to this and haven't listened to that, go check out that episode. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, my number 10 is The Monkey.
Nice. Yeah, moving right along, because we have a lot of things to cover here between us. Number 9, for me, as a book, would be Misery. This book just grabbed me right away from the onset. I imagine that the realism of this situation emerged for Stephen King, being just such a popular writer, that he must have gotten some really creepy fan mail over the years and possibly had some run-ins with crazy fans, which I imagine inspired the story. If you're looking for an edge-of-your-seat thriller to read, check this one out. It's outstanding.
And for me, it's one that you just talked about. As far as a book goes, Salem's Lot. It's kind of funny. We're we're lining up a little bit. I know that this list is going to get way out of sync here in a bit. We honestly did not share a list beforehand, so if there's any crossover, it is just happenstance. We wanted to make sure that we did that before going into this, but yeah, I mean, Salem's Lot, it's classic, right? Like I love the retelling of it, the audio version, the BBC version. It might be my favorite of all of the Salem's Lot stuff.
I need to check it out.
The book itself is great. That is available on the Internet Archive. It's definitely worth the listen. There's some great voice actors. It's its own creepy thing. It follows the book closely enough that it's a great way to consume the book if you don't want to read the book. And then also the audiobook's great. It's a good read. I think this is probably my second or third Stephen King book I ever read. And I can kind of remember checking it out at the public library. So it's one of those things where like nostalgia ties into it. And it's very, classic horror set in New England. You get a little bit of vampire lore, some American realism. It's great. I like it a lot. I like some other stuff on the list a lot better, but it did crack my top 10. So
nice. In at number 9 for my film choice, and again, I'm doing this. It's my top 10, so I'm choosing to do it the way I'm doing it. But is coming in at number 9 is It. And I'm choosing to say both the old version and the new version since it's the same story. And I love both of the adaptations. So obviously the made-for-TV movie starring Tim Curry and the more recent 2-part film adaptation starring Bill Skarsgård. So I just lumped them together. Both of these adaptations tell the story of the Losers Club facing off against Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Each of these adaptations are worth your time, and each of these great character actors have put their twist on the titular clown who lures kids into the sewer. As Pennywise says, "We all float down here, Georgie."
For me, it's The Dead Zone at number 9. Dead Zone is for me a forgotten classic that no one talks about.
Nice.
It's just a cool flick. It's really weird. It's about like psychic foresight and political parable. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain The Dead Zone. Just if you've never seen it, go watch it.
Also a great book, by the way, that I will just, little spoiler, didn't make my list, and now I'm kind of like second guessing myself. But yeah, I love that story a lot.
It's one of the weird ones where I like the movie more. And I guess it's just maybe I've seen them, I've probably read the book once and I've seen the movie like 5 to 10 times.
Christopher Walken, a very young Christopher Walken, yeah.
Very young Christopher Walken. It is a cool book, cool movie. Cool, a cool book too, but a cool movie, and that's my number 9 is The Dead Zone.
Nice. Coming in at number 8 for me for novels, Revival. This is a more recent Stephen King story. It came out about 12 to 15 years ago. It's a story that spans 50 years, beginning in a small town in the 1960s. It follows the lives of a young boy at the onset, Jamie Morton, and a charismatic youth pastor / preacher who become friends. And then a terrible tragedy occurs that upends the life of the pastor, and he denounces God, and the story continues to unfold decade by decade with these two characters' lives intertwining seemingly at random, but for reasons that you understand as the story gets closer to its conclusion. The ending of this book bothered me for weeks after reading it. No spoilers here, but I'm sure we'll get around to talking about this one in more detail on a future episode. Do yourself a favor, if you haven't read this book, give it a go. It scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's one that I have to check out. So I have not read that one yet. For me, number 8 is, and this is, I don't know if, I guess it did get a solo release. This is more of the Bachman books, I guess. But The Running Man. I love The Running Man. I think it's one of the most fun Stephen King things. It has this Blade Runner aspect to it. It's like this weird alternative timeline, similar to The Long Walk. It's a creepy, crazy game show theme. I just dig that stuff. And I really, really enjoy specifically that book. So it made my number 8. I had to pick one from the Bachman's books here to throw in there. It was between this and the Long Walk. We just did an episode on the Long Walk, so I felt that would be doubling down. So I went with The Running Man, which is also great. I will go ahead and give a spoiler alert. The Running Man film adaptation did not make this list, though I do love it. I felt like it's so different that it didn't deserve to be a part of this. It probably would have made the list because I love Arnold so much in that movie, but it did not make the. It has nothing to do with the book, so it did not make the list.
I agree. I'm really excited for the new adaptation that's coming out with Glenn Powell, I think in November. And I'm sure that we'll get around to talking about Running Man as its own standalone thing here coming up in the near future. Moving right ahead for film, coming at number 8 for me is The Shining. Unlike my wife and Stephen King himself, for that matter, I'm a fan of the Stanley Kubrick film. With one of his most iconic performances, Jack Nicholson, playing a father and husband who has had some issues with alcohol, is looking for a quiet, secluded place where he can write his book and support his family while staying sober. Obviously, he shouldn't have chosen the Overlook Hotel, as it's haunted, and the weeks turn into months, and Jack slowly loses his mind. All the work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's obviously an iconic film, and you've likely seen it. Small side note, all the exterior shots of the hotel for the film are of Timberline Lodge at the top of Mount Hood, here where I am in Oregon. I've been to that lodge many times over the years and can say from personal experience that the interior of Timberline Lodge looks nothing like the Overlook that you see in the film, because a separate hotel in the UK was used for the inside filming.
Oh man, so your wife is absolutely gonna hate my list. Her and Stephen King both as we get further down this thing. But at number 8 for the film, I got Pet Sematary, the earlier Pet Sematary, not the re-release that they recently did. I hated that. But you know what they say, the person you put up there ain't the same person that comes back. That's exactly how I felt about that movie. That's how I felt about the remake of Pet Sematary.
Sometimes dead is better, as they say.
He's not God's cat. He's my cat. Let God get his own cat. Love that movie. It's still a fun watch. It's one I try to watch around this season. I haven't yet, but it will definitely get into the rotation. It's specifically, that road. We don't go down that road. I can't think of the actor's name. I love it. It's not the best movie of all time, but I just have such an affinity for it and love it. It's one that I've made a seasonal October watch for years now. So it would feel wrong if it didn't make this list. So that's my number 8 film.
Nice. Moving on to book number 7 on the list for me is Desperation. This novel is absolutely bonkers, and I'm here for it. It follows several different travelers who are pulled over by a local cop in Desperation, Nevada. What ensues is a story that only Stephen King could tell. Also, a fun side note, being that we are Bachman's basement. The Regulators is a mirror novel written under the Bachman name that uses the same characters in a similar situation, but in a completely different setting and dealing with different themes than Desperation. As King himself noted, one book's about God while the other is about TV.
Yeah, and I'm more familiar with the Regulators, so neither of those made my list. But I do want to check out. I don't know that I've read Desperation, so I'll have to check that one out. I'll add it to my list. Chris,
you might like it better. I don't know. I love them both, but they're different enough that they are separate stories. But you can see that they have the same bones.
I'm more of the color commentator for this show. I lean on Chris for most things Stephen King. He has more of the expert knowledge as far as some of this stuff. But to wrap it back to the list here. For number 7, I have It, the book, and I have It, the original film. I know it's weird to put them together, but they're the same amount of where I would throw them on the list. It just happened that way. It, the book, for a lot of the same reasons that you already stated. I mean, it's a chilling tale. I think the movie is wonderfully done, and it did as a child. It's probably one of the horror movies that scared me the most. And I think I've talked about this in a previous episode. I think our very first episode. The in between where you get up and switch the VHSs is the scene where the picture, the photo book, the photo album the children are looking at comes to life. And Pennywise is just going like batshit through these photos and swinging off lamp posts. And Tim Curry's just so incredible in his physical acting there. And it just terrified me to the point where I did not watch part 2 of the movie for like 2 days and then came back to it and finished it. So it's one of those things that always sticks out in my head as far as the film goes. The book is haunting in its own way. And obviously the endings are different, but somehow they ended up at 7 on my list. Now that I'm looking back at it, I may have shifted it a little better just so that they both didn't end up in the same slot. But 7 and 7 for me. I'm sorry I skipped ahead on the film, but it just made sense to talk about them both at the same time.
Awesome. Well, also just to kind of wrap it back, another overlap for me. My number 7 film is Pet Sematary, the 1989 version, following young Dr. Creed, who's a fairly new father, small town of Ludlow, Maine. He discovers supernatural burial ground where the dead are returned to life with terrifying consequences. The acting in this adaptation isn't necessarily the best, but it works really well for the story, and that little kid is just absolutely terrifying in the last act. So it definitely, I mean, obviously we're going to be seeing overlap here as we go along. There's just some Stephen King classics that you can't deny.
So did the modern retelling make your list?
No.
Okay, so Dead is better. We were right. Dead is better.
Right. I mean, the retelling, I like the actors, the choice for Lewis Creed and for the old man played by, I can't even think of his name.
John Lithgow, right?
John Lithgow. And I thought that was a great choice casting-wise, but the movie it made some changes that I understand why they did it, but also like it's just, again, not my favorite, but I've watched it more than once, so yeah.
It also did a weird cover of the Ramones' Pet Sematary, which if we were doing a list of best Stephen King songs, that'd be number 1 for me. And it has Ghost on the soundtrack, so there's some stuff in the remake that's not terrible. John Lithgow mostly, and then the soundtrack is okay.
Oh, and I guess just to segue into my 6th place choice for book, I didn't even realize it, but I had put Pet Sematary in 7th place as a film and put Pet Sematary the book in my 6th place. So until I began to organize what I wanted to say here, the book, in my humble opinion, probably the most disturbing. I remember the first time I was reading this book, and I was reading it on my front porch, and my son, who was about 3 years old at the time.
Take that again from your book. You cut out for a second.
Okay. So I didn't even realize it at the time, but when I made these lists, but Pet Sematary, the movie, made it to 7th place, and Pet Sematary, the book, made it into the 6th place. So as I was putting this together, so they kind of fell in a way, sort of like your last choices being kind of lined up as well. But this book, in my opinion, is probably the most disturbing story that Stephen King has ever penned. I remember the first time I was reading this, my son was about 3 years old, and playing in our front yard while I was sitting on the porch reading and then watching him play. And the road we lived on at the time was notorious for speeders. And although there was thankfully no close calls with my son, it made me very uneasy as I continued to read this story.
It's so weird how see, for me, like Pet Sematary the book doesn't really do anything for me. So spoiler alert, it's not on my list. But I could see that because we have two very different lives. I don't have kids. So like the whole, like, I got to bring my kid back kind of thing. And how like all of that stuff would be very terrifying if I was a parent, but like I don't have that experience. So it's kind of weird how some of these books are going to be different just based on our life experiences and who we are. Right. Like I think that's what makes Stephen King great. Cause there's something out there with his massive catalog for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I never really thought about it, but obviously I got to reading Pet Sematary when I was a fairly new parent. So that certainly played into the agony and truly just dark nature of this story. So yeah, made it to number 6 for me. How about your 6th place?
My number 6 is The Shining. The Shining, as you went through the film earlier, is a wonderful, very detailed story. You get psychic battles. You get the haunting of an entire hotel coming alive. The biggest poltergeist ever pinned, to some extent. You get the descent into madness of Jack. Some of the things I like about that book that stick out are just random things that King threw in there, like when Jack's talking about his sobriety and the town's starting to lean in on him. And he talks about he just chewing Excedrin instead of just swallowing them, chewing them down into powder form and swallowing them, stuff like that. Some of the small details of like, this is how I was such an alcoholic. This is how I took Excedrin every day for a time and just chomping on them, like that kind of stuff. And I think that's what's great about The Shining is like, I remember a lot of little bitty things about that book. Almost like a Hemingway type thing, as far as like some of the landscapes and things that they're talking about. And so it's my number 6. It's great. Everyone knows The Shining. They know the story of The Shining. If you're listening to this podcast, you know the story of The Shining. I think a lot of people will be surprised that it's 6 on my list. It's probably would be higher on a lot of other people's list. It's a great book. But there's some here that I've included that might, surprise people. I think when people think of Stephen King, they think of horror. So some of my list is going to shift. Just heads up for everyone listening.
Same here. So yeah, definitely. My 6th place film, as we've already covered on a previous episode, for me, my 6th place film is The Long Walk, a very recent movie. So I'm going to keep it short. I just thought it was a great adaptation, incredibly well-cast group of actors. If you're a fan of that story, give this movie a watch. It is a new Stephen King classic film.
Yeah, and for me, and we talked about, for everyone out there listening, once again, we talked about The Long Walk, we talked about the movie, we talked about the book. Go check that podcast out. For me, number 6, Maximum Overdrive, brother.
Nice.
I know it's not necessarily an adaptation, but it was written and directed by Stephen King himself. I love it. I've loved it ever since I was a kid. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know a lot of people. It's that cheesy B horror movie, like Chopping Mall kind of thing that I love. So it's already in my wheelhouse without having any attachment to. As far as I know, there's no book this is based on. I could be wrong. But I love it. I love it. I love everything
wrote
about
that
it.
For the screen.
It's ridiculous.
I know
it killed his directing career to some extent, but I love it. All these years later, still love it.
Well, I've watched enough interviews with Stephen King and even the younger Stephen King and him talking about making that movie. He had this idea that because he's so good at writing and he could write screenplays and he could write books like nobody's business, that he thought that would translate to directing a movie and he had what he thought was a great idea for a movie, but he realized very quickly that making a movie is a very different animal, and that's why he just not only did it not do well financially, but he also didn't really like the process of making a movie, is what I gather. But it is a really fun B horror movie for sure.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. It's got the truck with the Green Goblin on the front of it.
Heck yeah.
It's like the second coolest semi truck in all of film. It's like the Smokey and the Bandit truck, and then the Green Goblin truck.
Well, it's like he had an idea with Christine where a car comes to life, and then he thought about, where he's all like, I always notice vehicles from the front looking like faces. I think that, I have another story to tell about that. So that definitely is awesome that made your list. Number 5. So we're into the top 5 now. My number 5 book, swerving away from horror, is 11/22/63. The title of the book is A Date, the day Kennedy died. This novel is a fantasy time travel story that follows a man from the present day who finds his way into the past, 1958 to be exact. He realizes that he can take this portal back to the present, and only 2 minutes have elapsed, no matter how long he spends in the past. When he begins to think about what he could do with this amazing discovery, he decides that he's going to live in the past for 5 years in an effort to stop the JFK assassination. This book won awards, and rightly so. It is a brilliant story that deserves a read or listen if that's more your style.
It's a great book, and it's one you turned me on to, because I had not read this when we first started playing games and talking about Stephen King, and then eventually being like, hey, we should do a podcast, and then 5 years later did a podcast. But yeah, that one, spoiler alert on that one. But yeah, for me, number 5, I have The Stand. It's a King epic about morality and renewal after the apocalypse, and it's just so good. It's so, I don't know, man. It makes me feel uneasy. Everything about it. And it's always one that I kind of come back to. It's probably one of the few that I've read multiple times on this list. And I don't know why that is, or why I don't have it higher, because I've read it multiple times, but it's wonderful.
That is it is incredible story. Coming in at number 5 for my film choice. Once again, it's a story that we recently covered for you guys. The 2025 film, The Monkey, makes my number 5. The film by Osgood Perkins is a modern classic retelling of an already classic short story, and that's why it made it to my list. So just moving right along. We won't dwell on that too long.
Number 5 for me might surprise some people, but it is Stand By Me. Stand By Me is a coming-of-age tale about 12-year-old friends set in 1959 who go on a journey and to find the body of a missing boy. And that's the entire story. And it's mostly about their friendship, but I am a sucker for a good coming-of-age tale. Maybe it's because I had such a hard time in middle school. I don't know what that is, but sucker for it. And I absolutely love that movie. It's one that I can go back and watch repeatedly. I think it's just a feel-good flick.
Super cool. The cast, how so many great child actors that went on to have some of them anyway have great careers as adults, and sadly we lost one of them too soon as well. But man, that is a great film, and again, one of those films that I'm like kicking myself didn't make it to my list. Maybe I didn't think hard enough about this list, but there's also such a huge amount of content when it comes to talking about Stephen King, and so yeah, I'm glad that made it to your list. That is an excellent movie. Check that out. For my number 4 place for a book, it's It the Novel, and coming in at 1,138 pages. I know I've talked to so many people over the years that just couldn't get through this novel, but in my opinion, it is worth every word. Although it's not a perfect novel, there's a lot of problematic things in this story. It is one of Stephen King's most iconic stories, and I've read it more than once. If you like spooky and you have a passion for reading, don't miss this one just because it's long.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and the imagery in it's great. It's kind of one that I should go back and revisit. I had it lower on my list, but I think it's because it's been so long since I've read it. I remember getting spooked really bad. This one I checked out when I was at work, and I had the Audible version or like audiobook version of it or whatever it would have been at the time. And someone tapped me on the shoulder, and I had a similar reaction that you're talking about when your mom grabbed your leg. It's like, don't do that, please.
Almost have a heart attack.
Yeah, this would have been back in the day of the original iPod, so it was a while back, but yeah, so it's a great book, as we've talked about here. For number 4, we're at number 4, right? Yeah, we're number 4. I have Misery, and
nice.
Yeah, it's such a cool book. You get like the tale of this author who has an obsessed fan. He's written what he considers a masterpiece, a breakaway from this character that everyone's obsessed with. He has this car crash and is held hostage, and it's kind of about his escape and the madness of this obsessed fan. And yeah, and it's well written, and you get some of the book that he's talking about. So you almost get a book within a book, which I always love. Like The Watchmen does that, for instance. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. It's a haunting tale to think about, especially as someone who has pursued art over the years, like playing music. Granted, I've never got anywhere near as close to big as Stephen King. Don't claim to be, but it is something to think about. Like if you ever did make it big, could this happen to you? And how terrifying would that be, right? Having an obsessed fan kidnap you and hold you hostage and break your legs. And there's something that was always very unsettling to me as a writer about that.
Right. Yeah, that exactly what you're saying. Funny thing that your number 4 book is my number 4 film. The film Misery. Obviously, Stephen King has so many great books. That's why Misery was a little further up on my top 10 list for a book. But as a film, the 1990 Rob Reiner film starring Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes, she won an Academy Award for Best Actress in that role, as well as James Caan as Paul Sheldon. To me, it's top 5 material for Stephen King adaptations. And yeah, so that's my number 4 film choice there.
Yeah, it's also my number 4 film choice. Sorry to copycat you here and to do the thing where I slam 2 together again, but it could almost be higher, but there are some masterpieces for films going on the rest of my list. If you look at them as just films, Kathy Bates is incredible in Misery. Still to this day horrifies me when I watch it. Just her ability to snap from being so kind and almost motherly in the way that she loves this writer to by I love you so much you can never leave is really, like, she just plays it so well. And there's a reason why she won. I think that she's the only person ever win an Academy Award as far as an actress goes for a horror flick.
I think you're right. I don't know for sure either, but that sounds right to me. I mean, horror doesn't make it, sort of like comic book movies, with Heath Ledger winning for, posthumously. But that, if you just do an undeniable job like she did in this, I'm glad that she did win, because that is, it's a performance for the ages for sure.
Yeah, and then just a heads up to everyone out there, there's other Stephen King flicks I like. The bottom of this, we're getting towards the top. These are just straight movies I like, maybe that don't necessarily have to do with, like, there's examples of where the books are not in my list, for instance, with one coming up.
Right. I wonder, because again, I don't know your list and you didn't know mine, but I wonder, I've seen some overlap here. I wonder how this top 3 is going to go. For me, my top my number 3 book is Needful Things. It's one of my absolute favorite Stephen King stories. After a new little shop opens in Castle Rock, Maine, people find that the things that they desire most end up becoming their undoing. It's a banger, as they say, and we'll be dedicating an entire episode to this one real soon.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to do that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. For number 3 for my book, this one might be a shocker to you. I don't think it's one that we've ever talked about together. Dolores Claiborne. I think it's one of Stephen King's most underrated novels. It's about a woman named Dolores who's accused of murdering her wealthy employer. And while she's in police custody, she confesses to a past crime, the murder of her abusive husband, and recounts the events leading up to both deaths through flashbacks, and revealing trauma throughout her life and the relationship with her employer. And the narrative kind of changes to explore Exchange's relationship with her daughter. It's a book that might make my top 10 if I'm going across all writers, not just Stephen King. It's wonderful. If you've not read it, I know it's not one that gets talked about a lot, but it's definitely worth the read.
That one didn't make my list. And again, another Kathy Bates performance if we're talking about the film. When I read the book, though, just to kind of riff on your selection, that one I just love so much because it's written in the first person as being a story being told to the police by Dolores. I could only hear Kathy Bates's voice through the whole thing. So
I've never seen the movie. Is the movie worth watching? I guess
it is. It's not quite as epic as Misery for Kathy Bates' performance, but her voice is just like, I don't know if you've seen the movie and then you read the book, or maybe watch the movie then reread the book, you will not be able to not hear her voice, because I mean it is literally a first person narrative, through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be that. I'm gonna have to check it out, and then I wonder how the voice is gonna match up versus the voice that I have in my head for Dolores.
The other thing, since you mentioned that as a book, that obviously people should check that out. It's an incredible book. If you do check that out, again, an honorable mention. It didn't make the list. I don't know. Maybe it made the list for you. It hasn't made the list for me, but it's Gerald's Game. And those books were released like spring and fall in the same year. And they have the same map in the front page of the book. And they have a very small connection to each other that I won't necessarily talk about here, but worth reading those books, one or the other. Doesn't matter the order. Back to back, though.
And Gerald's Game was also made into a film, right? That has God, who is in that?
That's Mike Flanagan that made that for Netflix. And I thought when I read that book, the Gerald's Game, that there's no way that story could be made into. I was like, I always think about it after I finish reading one of his stories, whether it's short story or a novel. Could this be a movie? Could this be a short, could this be a miniseries? And that was one that I was like, there's no way this is ever becoming, kind of like Rage, that Gerald's Game is ever becoming a movie. And man, was I wrong. And Mike Flanagan really did it right, for sure.
Yeah, and as we talked about with Rage, it did become a movie. It's called The Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
No, so I like that movie. It did not make my list, but it is a good watch. I don't know that I've ever read the book though. Maybe I have. Maybe it's been a while. We'll check back in on that for Gerald's Game.
For Gerald's Game. That one, the movie, Mike Flanagan has like an uncanny ability to distill what's great about Stephen King's writing into film. And so I feel like the movie Gerald's Game is like about as good of an adaptation as you could possibly hope for when it comes to that. It's like a beat for beat telling of that story. It hits all the right points. So yeah, check it out. It's on Netflix. I guess we're getting into top 3 territory here for film. My number 3 spot is for film is Dr. Sleep. Again, we're just talking about Mike Flanagan. Excuse me. This film serves as a perfect adaptation, not only for Stephen King's The Shining novel, but also as a perfect sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining film. Again, Mike Flanagan directing it, and turns into one of my favorite adaptations of a Stephen King book. The book's fantastic as well. Definitely check that out, even though it didn't make my top 10.
Yeah, we have various opinions on that one. I remember some harsh discussions about old Dr. Sleep when that came out, but my number 3, leaning more into the sensitive side of Stephen King, is The Green Mile. The Green Mile, brilliant. Tom Hanks plays Paul Edgecombe, and you get Michael Clark Duncan, who's playing John Coffey, who's a massive human being who brutally killed a pair of young sisters, who has this fear of a dark, but also this supernatural gift. And Paul, as the white, I guess, what was he, the warden, I guess? And I'm trying to remember. Either way, he starts to question whether Coffey was ever truly guilty of murdering the 2 girls, and that's the basis of the entire story. It's a wonderful film. It doesn't need me to sing its praises. It's gotten a lot of love over the years. It comes in at my number 3 because number 2 and 1 slaps so hard for me that I couldn't put it higher. And for the few weeks we were talking about doing these lists, I was in such a conundrum as far as how I was going to order these, and then I just went off which movies I like better at the end of the day. But they all stand on their own and have all received their flowers, as people like to say. But yeah, The Green Mile is my number 3.
Nice. Well, moving into number 2 spot for my book, one you've already mentioned that made it to your list as well is The Stand. It's probably a lot of people's favorite Stephen King book. It's another 1,000+ page story, and again, worthy of every page there. They actually, when he first released The Stand, the publisher made him shorten it up because of their ability to bind novels in paperback, and they were like, it's not going to hold together properly, so they made him release a version of the book that was amended. He then some years later released the proper version. And anyway, story of a super flu that wipes out nearly the entire planet, with only a few thousand people surviving, following 2 separate groups who end up at odds with one another. Absolute classic story of good versus evil. Most people probably that are Stephen King fans know it. So yeah, it's my number 2.
At my number 2, following up on my number 3 film, a little bit of crossover here, is The Green Mile, for all the same reasons as the movie. It examines justice and endurance as far as the characters go within prison walls, and I think it captures kind of like mystical empathy between 2 characters, and it kind of, I don't know, it's such a wonderful book and such a wonderful film adaptation. And I'm slowly starting to think that I should have had it higher as we talk about this, but it's great. I feel like some of the ones that I've talked about are not what normal Stephen King fans would have on their list, but I feel like they should be talked about because they're works, like absolute works of art, like things that I would watch even if I wasn't, or read even if you, things that I would recommend to people who aren't horror novel fans but want to know about Stephen King. I feel like those are good examples.
Absolutely. I mean, Stephen King, I've heard him say it of himself. He's like, yes, I've gotten the name of the master of horror, but he's like, I've never thought of myself as a horror writer. I'm just a writer that, just kind of the horror stuff comes with the package. But yeah, obviously he's a great writer, whether it's a scary story or just a really great story. Yeah, you're kind of taking in the wind out of my sail a little bit, Chris. My number 2 film is The Green Mile. So yeah, we're kind of aligning a bit here as well. Obviously, This movie came out in 1999, and it's one of the best movies that came out in that year, which is really saying something. There was a lot of great movies that came out in that year. This film was nominated for several Academy Awards and sadly didn't win any. I just looked that up earlier. If you haven't seen this film, you are missing out. It's a masterpiece of a film.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just thought of it, but with the Green Mile book, as you were mentioning, I love how Stephen King released it in serial format to begin with, and then combined it into a book. But it was released as month to month over 6 months. So for the people that were following along, they would buy probably at a discount, maybe $7 or $8, just 1/6 of the novel. And then so there's people out there that have that collection in that way, and I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, I only read it as its full released form, but having it serialized would be really, really cool, even just to have on a shelf. I wonder how much those go for now. Probably a pretty penny, I would think.
Who knows? Yeah.
All right. My number 2 for the film, because I haven't hit that yet, or you're up, right? No, you said number 2 is Green Mile for you, right?
Yeah.
So okay, it's my go. The Shawshank Redemption. Absolute wonderful performances by Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. It's a story about a banker who gets set to serve 2 consecutive life sentences after murdering his wife and lover. And it is the story of him trying to get out of jail, plan his escape. There's some wonderful things about the movie in it that portray time, such as even the actresses he has on the wall as he's digging this crazy tunnel to get out. It's not only like one of the top movies that I have on this list. It's another one of those ones that would probably be like make a top 20 for me in general. It's incredible. For anyone that if there's anyone out there listening to this that hasn't seen Shawshank Redemption, go watch it. Go watch it right now.
Right. Yeah, that one's absolutely insanely good. And spoiler alert, I'm just ruining the end of this, but that's my number 1 choice for a film. So I guess I'll go out of order here. So my number 1 film is The Shawshank Redemption. I feel that it's one of the greatest movies ever made. Likely, if you're listening to our podcast, you've probably watched this film. It's possible at some point that you watched it and didn't even know it was a Stephen King story, as it has no supernatural elements or any other hallmarks that kind of make Stephen King known in the way that he is. The performances, the story, just overcoming the impossible while also being another wrongfully imprisoned tale like the Green Mile before it. This one just can't be beat, in my opinion, for King cinema. It's chef's kiss.
I agree. Yeah, I guess we'll get into number 1 novels. You want to go first? Do you want to expose your number 1?
Well, go ahead and do your number 1 film, and then we'll end with the book, I guess.
My number 1 film is the only film that I like better than Shawshank and the Green Mile on this list, which is The Shining. I think it's a cinematic masterpiece. Visually, it's incredible. I think the performance of Jack Nicholson's is insane. It's one that still kind of sits with me if I watch it too late at night. I know it's different than the book. I love the book as well. The book made the list. I like the movie a lot more. I'm that guy. So call me out in the comments or
apparently call us both out. I mean, it made your number 1 spot. It made my list as well. But yeah, it's I mean, Kubrick, you either like him or you don't, but I think he was a genius for sure.
I had the experience of getting to see this at the Athens Classic Center on the big screen, and if that ever comes back around in its full film format, I recommend going and watching it and then just really taking it all in. They also had some of the people that worked on the movie there talking about it. For instance, the famous shot of the elevator opening and the blood coming out, for instance, that was one take. They had one take at that to get it right. So there's stuff like that about the movie that I absolutely love. It's wonderfully shot. To me, it's Stanley Kubrick's best film as well. Even though he is a great director and artiste, for lack of a better term. But yeah, it's another one that I watch every time this year. So
heck yeah, that I own it. You know, that I think it's a great movie. It's one that I saw very young as well. I wonder, you know, they've been bringing back a lot of classic films for their respective anniversaries. I think that movie came out in 1980, if I'm not mistaken. So then we're probably going to see a 50th anniversary in 2030. So
yeah, it must have been some anniversary show that I went to. It was kind of weird because you had like a protege of Kubrick who worked with him doing some of the cinematography work, and I can't think of his name to save the life of me. This was years ago at this point. It was when I was living in Athens, so it had been like 2009, 2010, something like that. It came out in 1980.
Yes.
Spot on. I'm assuming that it was some sort of anniversary thing that I went to even then. It would be cool. But there's been some good ones come back in theaters lately. Like I went to see Battle Royale. That was a lot of fun. For anyone out there that likes The Long Walk, you'll probably like Battle Royale if you've never seen it. It was only 3 dates though, so you already missed it. But you can check it out in multiple other locations. But I love that theaters are doing that. I feel like, you know, the art of going to see a movie has kind of died off, with Hollywood focusing more on, well, you know, recently they've gotten a little better, but the focusing on IPs and comic films for so long, and then COVID happening, I think it lost a little bit of its luster. So doing things like that, bringing movies back that people really love, and doing kind of weird niche things, I think it increases, you know, people coming to see those special events and stuff. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, it gives you an experience too. Like if it's a movie from before your time, like I got to see Christine, 50th anniversary of Christine in theater last year. And then also, or maybe it's not the 50th, that might have been like the 40th. And then the 50th anniversary of The Exorcist. I've seen the movie many times, but that one, seen it on the big screen. There's something special about the big screen. And we as fans of, you know, the silver screen, you got to keep that alive by showing the theaters that we care and go see your movies in the theater.
Yeah, they need to let's put Shawshank back. Let's get Shawshank back. I kind of want to see it on the big screen now because it's definitely.
I never saw that one, and yeah, that was it was like, I don't know, I was probably 10 or 11 when that one came out. And I mean, I remember seeing a bunch of movies in that era, like Forrest Gump, I think came out in 94. And there's a Jurassic Park was 93. So it was out right in that same era. And that was one I just did not see. But yeah, I hope
it's also a weird one you would have went and seen as a kid, though. You know what I mean? Like, they were taking you to see Shawshank.
That one, yeah, maybe the story is not necessarily one that a kid would enjoy that much, but it's just who could have known, you know, that was going to be such a masterful all around, just, you know, production. Just a little note with the Shawshank Redemption film. My wife and I had taken a trip about 4 years ago. We went to a festival, Incarceration Festival. It's in Ohio, and the filming location, the exterior location for the Shawshank Prison, is the Ohio State Reformatory. It was on the grounds for the festival, so we got to check out, you know, get a free tour of the building, and they still have several of the rooms set up just like they were in the film, with cardboard cutouts of the actors and stuff, so you can get pictures. And strangely enough, the halfway house it's obviously not in the prison, but it's set up in the prison and it was filmed there. as well. So that you get to see that in person as well with the person etched in, onto that wooden beam where it says Curly was here, Red was too, that's there, that wasn't some set that they tore down. That's a real thing. You can go check it out as a tourist.
That'd be super cool. I wish I'd have known that was there the few times that I traveled through that area, because there's nothing to do there.
No, I mean, it's Mansfield, Ohio, in case anyone that doesn't know. Mansfield is just this little nothing town, farming community, and then it's got that historical landmark, and then there's an actual modern day prison just a few hundred yards behind it. So
yeah, like my experience with Ohio is Cleveland has some great record shops and there's nothing to do there. Not to offend anyone from Chicago, but that's just my experience.
Ohio is, well, famously, it seems like everybody that's famous that's come out of Ohio tends to loathe Ohio. They talk about how they don't like going back to perform there. So.
Ohio's for lovers is what they say.
Right. Okay. Well, now we're here. We made it number one book for me. Again, you mentioned it earlier. I'm taking my liberties because it's my favorite Stephen King story, and it is actually the Dark Tower series. So I know it's like 8+ books, depending on which stories you include, but I consider this one big continuous narrative that ties so much of Stephen King's shared multiverse together. It's a Western, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's romance, it's horror. I've never read anything quite like this, and it's my favorite thing I've ever read, not just Stephen King, but ever. Call me a tower junkie. I have a hard time getting anyone to read these books, as it is quite an investment of time. What I like to tell people is, if the gunslinger isn't your cup of tea, or maybe it is, just read the second book, because the drawing of the three is a completely different genre, and every one of these books kind of skews into another genre, but somehow it's just a direct continuation of Roland's story. So I feel like most people get hooked on the story, if not on the first book, definitely by the second book. But yeah, that's why it made my number one. And I know I'm kind of cheating there because it's like so many books, but it is one big story. So.
Yeah, and it's one we talked about of how we would do it on the list. I think we did end up saying combined. I ended up just putting it off the list. If not, it probably would have made my number one and shifted some other things. The Gunslinger is one of my favorite. I love Westerns. I love the Gunslinger. I love the setup from the beginning, and then the continuation of the story of Roland, I think, is incredible. I think everything you said is spot on. It is a hard thing to get people to read, as it is a big commitment. It's like, if someone's never read Lord of the Rings, not that I recommend Lord of the Rings because I'm not a Middle Earth guy, you're asking a lot.
It's a big commitment, of time.
So I get that, but I always, at least try to push them in the direction of at least check out the graphic novels and then check out the check out the book, because I think it'll hook you. I agree with you. It crosses so many different genres and platforms. It's wonderful. I didn't talk about it too much for honorable mention, but it deserves to be talked about. I think it's as far as a full series goes, like that large of a series, it's probably one of the best of all time. If not, I mean, like the only comparisons would be something like I said, like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, and that's those aren't for me, brother.
Right.
So for me, that one's way up there. It would have hit number one on my list, but I have a surprise for you. It's a recommendation that you gave me for my number one.
What's that?
11/22/63.
Awesome.
I think this book and the story of this book is absolutely incredible. The entire idea, I love. It's so Star Trek. It's so accidentally going through a time portal and then trying to prevent the butterfly effect from happening, while also thinking about what would be good if you could change certain aspects of time, which in this case is the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and the battle between that, and then falling in love in a different time period and adapting to that, and grappling with the unexpected consequences and the resistance. The past itself is almost a bad guy in the novel. It's
how does King put it in that the past is what's the word he uses too, and he says it so many times in that book, is it obdurate? I can't remember the word he uses, but a fun word nonetheless, that essentially the past is resistant to you changing it. Yeah.
Right. It's almost like it's fighting the main character the entire time, which is, it's great. It becomes to some extent, it becomes the actual, the antagonist of the entire experience of the book. I love it. I absolutely loved it. We hadn't had a chance to talk about it since I finally got to read it after you for years telling me to read it. It has made my number one. It's maybe because it's one of the most recent ones I've read recently, but it is damn good. And it is very different than most other Stephen King things. And I love when King kind of goes off on a limb. He's like, how about we write something historical and weird? That's cool. And it's definitely one that I wanted to spotlight at number one to get other people to read, because I think it's very close to being a Stephen King masterpiece for sure. And if you're listening, if you're thinking about my list, it is, because it's number one.
Heck yeah. Well, here we are at the conclusion of today's episode. Feel free to share your own top 10 Stephen King books or movies at Bachman's Basement socials. And if you want to list off some of the socials that we're on.
Yeah. So look at anything with Boink Studio on YouTube, Boink Studio on Facebook, Boink Studio on Instagram. That's where we're getting all of our feedback from. Future will have a website that you guys can go through. And if you want to talk to me directly, it's christopher.r.patton on Facebook and christopher.r.patton on Instagram.
I'm available at Christopher Clawson on Facebook and the same on Instagram. And also, don't forget to tune in next week, where we discuss a certain Castle Rock shop whose proprietor knows her. I'm Chris Clawson.
And I'm Chris Patton.
And remember, the monsters under your bed might be real, but at least you've got us to keep you company. Have a great week, everyone.